just going to voluntarily give up their power. They're not going to relinquish their power. It's a struggle for me too, from the standpoint of just seeing cops, because I mean, I used to be a cop. I remember when I was just walking down the street in my neighborhood right now in La Mesa, and I saw cops. I saw every single cop car that I saw had 4 or 5 fully SWAT outfit police officers in there, and some of them did not look happy. Some of them are just reporting duty, and I know it's frustrating for them, because they probably, if it was given their desire, they probably would be on the other side protesting as well. But it's the only way you can really bring about change, at least my understanding. Like I'm saying, the only way you can really bring about change. You correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like the only way is to really overthrow those who are in power. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think?
I wish it was. I personally, I think it's a step further. Personally, I think our structures need to be dismantled and rebuilt, because the only reason that there are the only reason police departments and sheriff departments were conceived in America was to track down runaway slaves and bring them back to the South from the North. That structure is the same structure that's in place now, the same type of hierarchy, the same kind of blue line ideas, that they're doing something noble by oppressing. Police departments and sheriff departments weren't there to protect and serve communities. They're there to protect and serve white communities. Because we've replaced people in power all over the place, and the underlying issues haven't changed.
Yeah, because like you said, the
system is messed up, and so you can only do so much
system,
within whatever system you're in.
But that system continues to put people in power who support that system.
Because it's part of a larger system that was, again, established.
Yeah. Okay, so the new system to be in place, and that's what I'm saying. The new system, how do you implement a new system unless you completely overthrow those who can continue to support and add and buffer and strengthen that existing system?
I don't have the answers. I wish, right? And
you're why you're supposed to.
No, I know. I know, and we've had these conversations before, and that's why there's revolutions. I'm not saying like let's go and light everything on fire, but in a sense, I kind of am. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and the person was talking about peace isn't. We've mistaken quiet or silence as peace. That's not peace. That's just like forced silence. It's not peace. Peace is where you've actually conquered the violence and the reasons for violence. Right? We all know an abusive relationship doesn't start with the first punch. And just like George Floyd dying didn't start it's not an isolated moment. And the structure needs to be replaced because that cop had killed 3 other people who were not white and had never got fired, had never been prosecuted. Like, yes, not all cops are bad, but there's a lot of people in that department who stood by doing nothing, knowing what kind of cop this was. And that's the system, right? Like, they might be quote unquote good people, but if you're not, I mean, if you let evil happen in front of you and you just let it happen, how is that not evil?
Yeah, no, it's definitely evil. Absolutely. I mean, that's why even with the system we're talking about is, I mean, you're an accomplice to some degree. You're silent, you're watching it by, you're supportive of it just by saying nothing.
And all I know is I can't change people. And like, I've spent a lot of time just unpacking my own internalized racism, right? Like, I'm guilty of it too. I've been conditioned by this country to see the darker you are, the more dangerous and unknown you are. And I think everyone in America can feel that to a certain extent at certain times.
For sure. So, but that's my question then, is you've been able to, you recognize that you were conditioned there. How did you unravel that conditioning and replace it with another truth or another agreement or another thought about those of different skin color?
I think just having conversations with people, like just like understanding that whatever fear someone feels towards someone else that they don't know. I mean, obviously, trust your instinct on some things, but like starting a conversation and just asking authentic questions, and also just like asking questions that aren't superficial and just getting to know someone, not asking them to interrogate them or to have them teach you, but we all have so much more in common than any of us ever know, like think. And that's what always struck me. And then, I've just seen different, I think what really opened my eyes to it, and I hate that this is how it opened my eyes, but it's just the truth, and it's the only one I have, is when I was younger and into drugs and stuff like that, I saw the differences of how I was treated in the criminal justice system and in how my black friend was treated in the criminal justice system. And I saw the difference in when we drove, I never got pulled over. Ever. I ran red lights, like I didn't get pulled over. And if I did, it would be a talking to, maybe a speeding ticket, off I'd go. I mean, that changed after I got a record and everything. But even then, I never felt fear. But like got pulled over. I saw the difference in how we got pulled over and what those conversations looked like.
Yeah.
And I don't like that that's how I started kind of really realizing it, the difference. And I wish I had just listened to people's experiences. But that was like what really opened my eyes to where I was like, okay, this is like a real thing. And that's when I started listening, like believing everyone's experiences and really getting inquisitive.
So it took you having an experience for yourself, or multiple experiences.
I think so. I mean, and obviously I'm an unreliable narrator in my life, right? We all are to an extent, but I think it was that. I think a lot of it also might be my mom's side of the family and what they went through and the childhood stories I grew up with, right? Like I'd complain to my grandma about a bad day in 4th grade and she'd be like, well, at least you weren't at Auschwitz. Right? Like, and those conversations and her talking about the nice Nazis, the nice neighbors that turned them in and things, and the nice neighbors who stole their house and wouldn't give back their photos afterwards. And then the nice, like those stories, I think also opened my eyes and made me realize like how you have to really watch how people move, not just how they talk, not just if they bring you cookies, but how they really move through society. And man, I just, man, like you've helped me. Like, I just wish people would just fucking stop being so mean to each other, man. I don't know how else to say that shit. And it sounds corny, but that's just the honest to God truth.
No, it is for sure. It honestly, it reminds me too when I was a pastor, bro. Because this is just to show you that racism is not something that's just outside of the walls of the church or people of faith. I remember when I was a pastor, I started training other pastors to pastor churches. But specifically, one of the reasons why they had me do it is because I had a church that was, quote, multi-cultural. It was a church that was friendly for whites, blacks, Filipinos, everybody. And one of the questions that people will always ask me is, why is it that you have a church that's multicultural and that people of other races feel so welcome with you at your church? And honestly, it's as simple for me as I've got people that are friends. I got Filipino friends. I've got black friends. I've got white friends. I've got, basically, if it's a race that exists in my city, I got a friend. You know what I'm saying? So it begins first with us not being mean, like you said, not labeling. And that's what I'm wondering, did your racist conditioning begin to unravel as you started having relationships with other people who weren't like you?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And I never really, so I grew up in Mammoth, and there was one other Jewish kid I knew, and I hated him with a passion. I wouldn't hurt him, but I did not like I didn't like the family. Jesus? I didn't like him. But that was it. And we weren't practicing, but I just remember, I would be told all sorts of Holocaust jokes. Like, how many Jews can you fit in an ashtray? And what's the difference between a Jew and a pizza? Jew doesn't scream in the oven. Right. And there's countless more, but those two always stuck out to me. I heard those countless times growing up. And what I learned was it's really hard, I think, to understand oppression and what systematic violence looks like unless it's somewhere in your family or you've experienced it yourself. Like, it's really hard to understand how hurtful those jokes are, right? Because they grew up, a lot of people who don't have that anywhere in their family grew up where the Disney cartoon films were real for them. And my fairy tales from my mom's side, again, were not happily ever. I mean, happily ever after in that she lived, but that 90% of those people died in a very short period of time. And like, the Dr. Mengele and all. And so growing up with those stories and how hard and like all of it, I think, I don't know what the answer is. I don't get along. It sounds so weird as I'm going to say it because it's kind of true. I don't get along real well with a lot of white Christian people. I just don't. I don't like when people tell me to believe in Jesus. It fucking hurts.
Why though? Why?
Well, because that same believe in
they only want to save you. They only want to save you. They only want good for you.
I understand it, but that was the same. If only they had believed in Jesus, they wouldn't have, like, if only we had believed in Jesus, maybe we wouldn't have been killed. Right? So like that is a loaded question to someone like me. And it seems harmless to a lot of people. But it like hurts. It just hurts. I don't hold it against them, but it does hurt. And I know I've asked similar questions and had made similar statements to Black people. Probably more than I could ever know. And so none of this, I think, is ever about like being perfect and complete. Like, we're conditioned. We grew up in America. We were raised in this system by people who created the system. We are indoctrinated from media, from everywhere. I think just being self-aware and trying to like, not ask questions that would hurt someone unknowingly. And it seems like super little, but it creates distrust. It festers, and then when something overt happens, all those experiences are tied to that, right? Like, nothing happens in a vacuum. And it's just like the loaded question of asking you, why do you have such a multi-racial, diverse church is like kind of a loaded question. Because you ask that when you think something's wrong with it. It feels like, to me sometimes, like that question would be like, well, is there something wrong with this?
They were saying it was actually a good thing, and they wanted to have a multiracial.
Right, but then it's like, okay, why do you want it if it's not natural?
Yeah.
So like, it's also loaded. Like, that's what's so hard about this. Is like my brain. I'll go into those paranoid states. I get anxiety, and I go in my room for like 12 hours.
Yeah. That's why you're my brother, because I could on stuff like that too. I know.
And I know most of the time people are literally just being nice and like actually want to know and they mean well, but like, and mine is is so small because I live in America and I'm privileged as fuck. And so I like when I talked to you and you said earlier today, like how like you're in a lot of pain, I was like, man, I don't know what that is like. Like, I have a tip of the iceberg of that. And that's a fucking problem in America, that it still exists.
Yeah, it exists. I mean, I think honestly, you say that you don't have the answers, bro, but you are an example of how the change can take place. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't set out to change intentionally, but it happened organically as you expose yourself to other people of other races. And this may sound silly, but it's the same way for me. I was raised like, bro, super conservative, super Christian, to the point where I was told, if you had sex before marriage, you're going to hell. Gays and lesbians are all going to hell too. So honestly, my views of gays, even just gay and lesbians, didn't begin to change until I remember telling my brother, I'm like, bro, I actually met some gay people in that house. Like, I met some gay people, and they actually contribute a lot of good in this world. I met some gay people, and that's like the best salesman in my company, you know. So it wasn't until I began to meet other people who I was conditioned to believe that they were bad and experience them to be good that began to unravel. And then of course, then I start welcoming in my gay family members and loving on them, you know, because I'm not distancing myself from them anymore, so I don't get poisoned with their sin. And then of course, in life, I meet gay people and I don't think anything else of it. I literally think it means nothing to me, somebody's sexual preference. And that's where my hope is, where it gets to where when we just view people in their skin color, like you're white, you're Jewish, but like that means nothing to me in terms of judgments that I'm making about you at all.
Right. But all that takes time for,
yeah.
like, everyone has to go through those experiences. And I think for whatever reasons, there's not a lot, like, segregation's over, but there's a lot of self-segregating in a lot of ways. And freeways in California, we all know how freeways function and why they were drawn the way they were drawn up on the map.
And it was not that long ago where, what was it called? I want to say it was called blockbustering, where they were not giving
redlining
to
redlining.
Thank you. Of a particular race because they did not want them to infiltrate particular communities. So, so yeah, we're not too far removed from that. No. That was within our lifetime. That was within our lifetime. So,
man.
But yeah, we are seeing the segregation for sure still taking place. So, I mean, the experiences, and that's why I wonder too. I mean, we're having this conversation right now, you and I, but ultimately you and I are having an experience, right? People who are interacting with this conversation are having an experience. So it takes, like, the change is going to be from a grassroots level, I feel, with more people experiencing the difference. But like you said, people are still self-segregating. Some people refuse to ever interact with you.
Right.
Some people refuse to just even hearing you talk a little bit and be like, well, I refuse to talk to him.
Yeah.
He's whatever, and label you and just be like, boom, I'm done. I'm not going to go there.
Well, and that's, I mean, and part of that nowadays is cancel culture. Like, I see people getting canceled, whatever that really means, because of things they did 20 years ago or said. And like, you know, we'll see homophobic remarks come up and a celebrity gets distracted in the mud. And I'm like, and if I'm sitting there with someone like 10 years younger, because I'm not even that old, but I grew up in the 90s. And I was like, and if they're like 10 years younger than us, they didn't grow up in the 90s, they don't understand that every single human being, not every single, I shouldn't paint with a broad brush, most straight men in the 90s were fairly today would be considered extremely homophobic. And it's not making it okay back then, but it wasn't. We're all fallible, right? Like, and by us always looking for the perfect Messiah, we kill our leaders either spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, or physically. Absolutely. And so that's why so many movements, I think, in the last 15, 20 years fizzle and don't go anywhere, because we just we crush people for not being perfect. Like, we're never going to get that perfect leader. We're just not. And I'm not saying settle for the lesser of two evils. I'm not talking about presidents or anything like that. I'm just talking like, we live in a society of cancel culture where, like, as soon as we find it's just like, and it's part of why dating sucks nowadays. It's right. As soon as the first sign of like, you're not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
I'm out of here.
Fuck you. You're dead to me.
As a matter of fact,
you're a bigot. You're sexist. You're homophobic. You hate white people. You hate, like, and it's like, how are we ever going to move forward if we always do that to every single person we come in contact with who's not our friend? Because all of my friends, we're like, no one is near perfect, right? Like, most of my friends, if I wasn't so close to them now, I wouldn't like them that much. But I fucking love them because I got to know them so well. And I think that's what's really hard about nowadays, especially, right? Like, thinking about MLK, like, if MLK came up today and people heard about his infidelities, he would have been canceled.
Oh, for sure, without a
And I'm
doubt,
not saying like
definitely.
infidelity is good or whatever. I actually like marriage is a whole nother thing, but that canceling.
I was gonna say I know where you stand on this stuff, man.
I'm trying to evolve it. Quarantine opened my eyes to being isolated. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it's like thinking of that. I'm like, man, MLK probably would have been canceled, right? Like,
Yeah, without a
and
doubt.
and
Yeah.
so it's like we look for perfect leaders because grassroots, like a movement, eventually there has to be not just one leader, like a few. There needs to be some direction to something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when we just when we shoot holes in whoever our leaders are or whoever kind of takes the mantle, like
Yeah.
what good is it doing?
Yeah. So do you think though that we're actually shooting holes or we're looking for reasons to trust or not trust
We're probably
somebody? Because it can be, yeah, like I feel people we always like, okay, well, who's this person? Like even right now, somebody may share this and they're like, oh, well, who's Brian? Who's Victor? And start doing a Google search. Well, I don't like him because he we're so but it's either that or they're looking for reasons to believe and to trust.
yeah.
Because I think people are looking for. It's like when I was out there at the in La Mesa just a second ago at the riots. One of my questions was like, okay, well, who's leading this? Like, where are we going? What are we doing? What are we saying? What's the next step after this? And there was just no leadership. But if somebody did step up as a leader, I want to know, why is this person trustworthy? You know, or I don't want to follow anybody, so I'm just going to discredit them. Like, which one do you think it is?
I don't know. I think the distrust thing is really interesting, actually, because
Uh-huh.
then we're like, well, who are you? What are your credentials? Why should you lead and not someone
Yeah.
else? And
Yep.
what's weird about leadership is leaders are usually not qualified when they're called to lead. I mean, you know this. You know all the stories in the
Yeah.
Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
these stories about unqualified leaders essentially being called to lead,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're imperfect, even though they're some of the biggest sinners oftentimes, and
Mm-hmm.
doing good with it. Like finding their groove as a leader, whereas before a leader, they couldn't find their lane quite so well.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all unqualified leaders should be called to lead.
Right.
I think they're,
Right.
and so that
Right.
trust is hard, right?
Yeah. I know. It's obvious.
Man, this is not about politics. And honestly, like this shit happened before Trump. It'll happen. It'll probably happen after
Yeah.
Trump, and it happened during Trump. All Trump did
Yeah.
was give voice to a type of racism I think a lot of us had hoped had gone away, when in reality it never went anywhere.
Bro, I told you I lived in the South right before. I lived in the South during Obama's administration. And I remember my boss at the time, all the bathrooms, the communal, regular bathrooms that other employees used were all full. So I asked him if I could use his bathroom. And then I went, used the bathroom, noticed that his toilet wipes had Obama's face on it. So he literally had Obama's ass wipes. And then this is the same boss that on Casual Friday, this is during the Trayvon Martin situation and tragedy, I came Casual Friday with a nice hoodie. It was like I want to say it was like I forgot, I don't know exactly what style, but it was a nice dressy hoodie. But I never put it over my head. As he was walking by with two other vendors, he said, "Oh my God, walk out! He's gonna rob somebody." Like, it's just so I started to meet a lot of these people that either he was ignorantly racist and prejudiced and didn't know it, or he knew he was and just felt so empowered and felt like I'm of the superior race, so I can say whatever the fuck I want because there's no consequences. This is my company, my business, and it's my world because I'm a white American.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I can speak. I mean, part of that I know as a white male is like, if you do feel like you can speak whatever the fuck you want in most places.
that's completely different for me. I'm telling you. Even when I was out there in the protesting, people were saying like fuck the police, and I'm like, I can't really say that. I mean, what if I did? And somebody told me the other day, they're like, oh, all this will stop it when you start carrying a gun. And I'm like, I don't even carry a wallet. I literally don't. I don't carry a wallet because I don't want anybody thinking that I'm reaching for my wallet and that gets mistaken for a pistol. So I'm constantly filtering my words and my actions, sometimes even the way I dress, or like you said, haircut, all of that because I don't have that freedom to just feel like I can say or do or be authentically me.
And so
None of this
that
world.
is white privilege. White privilege isn't that it's fucking easy. It's that when I walk into an office building, not that I feel comfortable, I mean, but like I never feel like someone's gonna like comment on me wearing a sweater hoodie. Right? And I'm never gonna like I'm always gonna get the benefit of the doubt. I mean, unless I really try to dress to not get the benefit of the doubt. Like as a white person, you literally have to shower for like not shower for 2 weeks and wear like tattered clothing for people and stop giving you the benefit of the doubt. And even then, you're probably going to get the benefit of the doubt as just being a harmless druggie. Like you're just harmless as a druggie as a white person. You're sick, right? Like obviously within families, and there's exceptions to every rule. Like I'm saying this, and I'm saying this filtered through my experience. So for anyone who's like, think I'm filtering this as like when I say everyone or you, I'm really filtering this through my experience and what I've seen. There's exceptions to every rule. I feel like that should be a given. But you know, I remember when I was teaching college and seeing the difference in how students would respond to me versus how they would respond to a female teacher who looked young. And just the kinds of, you know, questions that would go right up against the line would be asked of a young female teacher or woman teacher. They didn't have to be female, they're just woman. And I never got people never came that close to me, you know, like, or never came that close to the line in their questions or their comments. And like, that doesn't mean anything's wrong with me. It just means that, and that's the thing is I think a lot of us get so defensive, like, whoa, I don't have privilege. Like I worked hard for everything I have. Well, that's,
you mean what? You mean
yeah,
what?
like of course, I'm not saying you didn't. Like, I know a lot of white people that work. I know a lot of people of every race that work really hard for what they have. When white privilege is thrown around, it's not about how hard you work. It's not about that you didn't have a hard life. It's that your hard life isn't because you look a certain way. And look isn't just dress. It's literally like your face doesn't look a certain way. Your face doesn't look a certain way. And I'm like, I don't know what to say about it other than like we need to have more conversations like this in society, because it's okay to like be uncomfortable and be like, yeah, I benefit from the system. It's not my intention to benefit. I do, and I know it. What can I do to fucking help so that other people get a benefit the same way?
Yeah, I love when you talk about white privilege, bro, because it helps me understand how you define it, and you define it in such a way that one, like you're not ashamed to admit that you have it. You know,
I remember in high school,
like it doesn't take anything away from you.
I remember in high school, this is like fucking white privilege. In high school, we're coming back from baseball practice, and it's like a 30-minute drive because it was snowing, so we had to practice like 30 minutes away. And me and like 3 buddies were in my mom's car, and we were going like 95 down the freeway, past the CHP going the other way, and we were just like, fuck it, we're gonna try to outrun them. The motherfucker caught us. I didn't even get a ticket. Didn't even get a ticket. I mean, I had to tell my parents, but like, that's pretty easy. Like I literally like was, you know, over 100 running from him. He said I wasn't gonna pull you over except you didn't slow down. Like I was consciously running from the cop. And you know, if I had been Mexican in that town, they would have asked whose car is this? They would have like taken me. It would have been a whole group. It would have been different. But they knew my family. And I looked one way, like, you know, and privilege is a thing. I think when I got arrested, like, I was really grateful to be white for what I got arrested for. And you know, like, it sucks to say that, but what sucks more to say that is like everyone makes mistakes when they're young. Like not everyone breaks laws and does crime, but everyone makes mistakes. We're young, we're learning, we're stupid, especially men. We're stupid as shit until we're 25. Like that's just the honest to God truth. Most men are dumb as hell until we're 25. I got to be dumb and not have life-threatening consequences because of it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Or you weren't dumped then at that point into a system
right.
that at that point,
and
I don't know, took away 90% of your potential.
Yeah, and I have white friends who they did get in trouble when they're in high school and stuff. Like this isn't to say like all white people have the same experiences. Just like no black people have the exact same experience. Like we all are individuals living in communities, living in bigger general populations than. But I mean, no one will ever look at my resume and look at my name and wonder and disqualify me because of my name.
Yeah.
And that's pretty nice. I know people who have changed their name because of that issue.
Yeah.
And like that's fucking white privilege. I'm like,
you said something on your post that stood out to me. It was like the 9th, I think. It was the 8th. I'm looking at it right now. It says, "How dare us white people think that we are the chosen ones to validate or invalidate whether someone has the right to exist? That's called white privilege." Like when I read that, you took white privilege in the sense that you feel that there are white people who believe that it is their privilege, just for lack of a better term, or they have their God-given right to be able to make decisions as who should exist and who shouldn't exist. Like that's what
I think that comes out when we see how people start trying to dig up things in innocent people's lives who are murdered by cops, and we try to dig up shit. Well, 10 years ago, he got caught selling coke.
Yeah.
Well, shit, so did I. If I got killed by a cop, would you bring that shit up? Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe you would say he battled addiction and he had overcome so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen that time and time again. Ferguson Trayvon Martin was the same thing. Like all these things, like
yeah.
And so really, what that list was me just kind of trying to figure out what I feel, and I struggled with. I didn't want to really post it. I wrote it a few days earlier, and just I've had black friends call me the fuck out on my shit. And also, I think part of that number 8 that you just read, that we think we have the right to choose who exists and how to exist, in telling black people how to protest, how to filter their own experience so that we can benefit from it. And like it's no other race is that demanded of. No other race in America is that ever demanded of. Ever.
Is the victim required to provide a solution?
Or the dead person required to defend their innocence?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas white school shooters, that dichotomy, it's fucking sad, and I think and when I say us white people, I'm really speaking from my experience. Like I'm sure there's white people who just never grew up racist, and then there's white people who grew up extremely racist, and everything in between. But I've been guilty of, thinking that I should that black people need to agree with me on racial things. Right. And I got called out super hard from someone once, and it was like it turned out into a 2-hour conversation, and my ego was hurt, and I always thought it was coming from a place of good, but really is coming from a place of I want to be right.
Yeah. You wanted to be like, right?
I wanted to be like, and I wanted to be right.
Oh, right.
Right?
Okay.
Like, I love being right. And so it's like, I've seen a lot of people posting about what the violent images, and I posted one, and then I read someone I know from grad school sent me or put something on the thing about not showing violent images, and I said, you know what, I like that, because again, I try to put myself in someone else's shoes. How painful would it be for me to have to look at images of my grandma's family in a mass grave? Like that moment. How fucking, like, that would scar me for the rest of my fucking life. I would never fucking recover from it. I would, like, I'd be okay at some points, but I would never fucking recover from that. And so, since I can't understand what that's like in America today, I shouldn't be trying to be right about shit about this. All I can try to talk to is like the white experience, because that's what I am. And I think we don't have I don't think we have conversations about that, right? Like, we have black studies in college, we don't have white studies. Whereas black studies really breaking down and critiquing why, like, a lot of going on, usually from the black perspective, from black authors. Rarely are we actually talking about breaking down white consciousness in the same kinds of overt talking points. We'll dress it up and we'll talk about white privilege and we'll talk about all these things, but you'll never go into a class called like white privilege. I mean, we should in college. Like, that should be available, and white people should fucking take that white study shit.
Well, I mean, we require all kinds of other courses. How can we require that one?
And people, I've also heard the argument, well, we're always in white studies. We only hear about how great white people are. Yeah, but we don't critique the complexity of what is being white and what that has an impact on black people, indigenous people, Mexicans, Japanese, different Asian populations, right? And we don't really unpack what the white consciousness means to other people and their experiences, how white people have gone to extreme lengths to maintain an invisible presence in this sphere of critique.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even when I think about the Boston Tea Party, how it was always communicated to me,
it's a revolution,
as a revolution and a momentous occasion in American history. Right. You know, like, but it was riots.
It was riots. It was riots. It was murder. It was going against. It was going against law and order. Oh my God, the Americans are going against law and order.
Yes.
Right. Like, where's their God? Like, where are their values?
Yeah. And they were doing that in a land of another.
Right. They're fighting over a land that wasn't theirs.
That wasn't theirs. But yeah, when I read about it, and I've read about it all, growing up, it was something that was a momentous occasion. This is almost as big as the Declaration of Independence. You know what I'm saying? So, but with that, I was wondering too, because I mean, somebody might be hearing you talk to me right now, a white person, and I'm wondering if white people ever get termed sellout, like how black.
I've had white people and not white people ask me why I hate myself. Ask me why I hate myself. Because I'll critique a white male experience.
That's what
I'm
saying.
Like, I don't hate I'm really pretty comfortable with who I am. And I'm okay enough to look in the mirror and know that I'm not perfect. And to also like just talk about what I see. Like, if someone gets upset that I talk about something that I mean, I've heard it all. I've heard people say thank you. I've heard people, but I've heard non-white people tell me that, like, I hate myself, and I'm like, I don't really hate myself. I just know what I am, and knowing what you are in any aspect of life means you know what you're good at and what you're bad at.
So it's just honest self-assessment.
It's like I would give anything to be able to play a musical instrument. I'm right-handed. I'm dyslexic. I try to play guitar left-handed. It doesn't fucking work. I could be delusional and say I love myself so much, I'm great at guitar. it doesn't make it fucking true. Right?
Yeah.
and so I think there's nothing wrong with being like, this is where I benefit from this. This is where I have shortcomings. Let me unpack this and let me see if there's something I can do to treat the people I love better, and to just treat people the way I really do want to be treated too. And I think to treat people the way I want to be treated means I have to take an honest look at it. We have to take an honest look at ourselves. And that means you uncover blemishes. And that doesn't, it's like, and I'm never going to tell, like, I can tell white people what to do a little bit more. I feel comfortable doing it because I'm white. And so I kind of know what that looks like. Me telling you what to do about this is me perpetuating white supremacy, me thinking I know how you need to handle your experience better than you because I'm white, basically, is the only reason I would ever think to do that. And before I learned that lesson, having an honest conversation about that, I've said things like that before, not knowing how insensitive and how fucked up it really is.
Yeah. But again, though, props to you, bro. But you take the time to listen to people's experience and not invalidate them and not have the arrogance to feel like you can still correct them. It is part of the reason why I was first generation American, but I've also lived in Honduras. And that's the first time I experienced racism. And they were like, they looked at me as an American because I came over there with a diplomatic passport. They hated me. This is the first time I was in 10th grade. They hated the arrogance that I had. And I was just lumped up in this group of, you guys are Americans. You guys come over and try to change every country and every nation. And you guys are over here telling us what to do and feel that you have a right to because you give us, $5 billion a year, So, I mean, one, props to you again for just having enough love for yourself to be okay with your flaws, but then also have the wherewithal to know that everybody's flawed and that's all right. It's good. But our nation, the perspective that our nation has outside, that the people have of our nation outside this world, is that egotistical, we're perfect. And
you all need to start looking like us. You need to fit our image of what we think good is. Right? And so privilege doesn't just stop and end with white privilege. There's straight male privilege, male privilege. I mean, just being born in America, honestly, just being born in America, you're already at a head start. Like, and that's, if you're born in poverty in America, you're at a head start compared to someone born in poverty in Honduras. Like, that's a fact. And it's like a lottery, honestly. And it's hard for us to have
the opportunities that we have are, we have endless opportunities. You can literally tell a kid here, you could be whatever you want to be. That language does not work. That pep rally, that motivational speech does not work outside of many countries in the U.S. There are many that are.
What I've always, Victor, what I've always admired about you is people will say, and I've heard your story on how you left the church, and I remember I met you, well, not when I met you, but like a little after, and like that you used to be in law enforcement, and then that you led a church, and like I was like, who is this man? And then I've seen how people kind of question your motives in leaving the church, and what I've always admired, and I wish I was better at it, is you never take an aggressive tone when someone comes at you with that kind of stuff. I don't know how you do it necessarily, but I wonder, so with that said, what do you, like, how would you start having more conversations that are honest and like painful to have, where people are actually open to like hearing different experiences and being like, that's okay that you have a different experience. I don't need to convince you that your experience is wrong.
Yeah. Honestly, bro, it does. I think, well, Misty just said it. It is a lot. It's exactly what she's saying. Maturity and compassion. I would say also another thing that I would add to it is, with compassion is understanding. Bro, I was there. I didn't know it, but dude, I was a homophobe. I didn't know it. I can quote to you all the Bible verses that tell you why I should have been a homophobe and why I was. But yeah, I was there, man. I was there. So I am I just have to be light with them. I have to be easy with them because I'm telling you, dude, I was that guy at San Diego State next to the dude who was talking to all the big people in the sororities and the fraternities, talking about, hey, like, you're gonna go to hell, you know, unless you accept Jesus. Like, honestly, it's embarrassing, but I'm not ashamed to say that's who I was because it's part of my story. I'm not that type of person now at all, but that's part of the reason why I just don't come at people that way. Because I mean, if I can change, I know that they can, but it's also not going to change by me getting in an argument with them. Because back then I had arguments for everybody. It was just basically, it's called apologetics. Like, I had a rebuttal for everything you wanted to say, and at the end of the day, it was the arrogance that I had that I held the truth, which was the Bible, and as many Bible verses I can quote to you, then I'll beat that argument. It doesn't work. Yeah, I think people want to know that. I think authenticity is the way to have those conversations. Just being authentic, bro. Like you and I right now. Like, we're talking. You're open about the stuff that you like. Dude, I sold crack before. You know, like, I just think it's just being honest, being authentic, not giving a fuck anymore about trying to please people. I don't care to please people anymore.
No.
And I just want to be honest. I want to be real with the struggles that I have. Like I told you, though, like right now, like back in the day, if you're asking me, oh, Vic, like, how you handling on? I'll be like, no, I'm good. The God is with me. He'll strengthen me. He'll give me. No, bro, honestly, right now, I don't have much
No?
hope. I really don't. Like, I mean, this conversation has helped me, but I don't have a lot of hope. Like, I'm scared to go outside right now. I really am. I really mean this. This terrifies me more than the coronavirus
Yeah,
thing.
that's what you were saying earlier today. And that's
Yeah, it's terrifying to me, man. And then emotionally too, it grits me because I got 3 young boys that live in freaking Atlanta, you know? And I know there's a whole lot of protest and especially there because a lot of their history, they feel like they need to be a voice, you know? They need to stand on the shoulders of Martin Luther King and they need to buck the system. But yeah, no, it's scary, man. I don't claim to have it all together. I really
I
don't.
know you don't. I know you don't. You look like you do.
No, hey, but honestly, being a leader in the church, you learn how to put on I'm good face. You know what I'm saying? Because you lose credibility when you're not good. Like you said, we shoot down our leaders all the time. So to show any sort of flaws or any sort of imperfection gives people reason to just leave you, discredit your
Well,
leadership.
and talking about leadership again is like, who would sign up to actually be a leader right now?
But you can say that anytime. I don't think and you mentioned it too, I don't think any leader
Right.
felt equipped or felt like, damn, why me right now? I'm not ready. You know what I'm saying? But leadership is one of those things that is, it calls you. You don't ask for it. You know what I'm saying? You can equip yourself as a leader by reading books, but you don't become a leader by reading one. Like, you're called to be a leader, and then you equip yourself
Do you
after
think
that.
that kind of leadership, like from the past, is possible in the day of social media and fractured attention spans and fractured voices? Is that possible?
I'm glad it's not looked to as strong as it was before. Like, now I believe, like, I've always had the idea of more like a plurality of leaders, you know, not just a kingdom or not just a king or a queen running the show. I think what exists now, what should exist now is a plurality of leaders that move forward, not just a one president or just one mayor. I agree with you. I think that even the way we look at leadership it should be more of a plural thing and not just a singular thing. Because, like you said, we all have not just imperfections, but we all have areas of strengths and areas of weakness. That is the beauty of plurality, because we can come together and strengthen each other and be there for each other in those ways, in those parts of weaknesses. So I'm glad that it's starting to break down, you know, in this social media
I
age and
really
this age
hope
of
for
living.
more like or different, like even like groups and people who think very parallel but not quite on the exact same lane. I would love to see the day where we and they all kind of like, okay, so like, okay, why don't we like move forward together? Like, do this together, because and that's what cancel culture doesn't allow quite yet, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, man, joining forces, so to speak, to make really effective change. And we've seen it at random periods throughout history where whole groups were able to kind of like coalesce together for a short period of time and affect not complete change, but drastic change compared to usual. And what's hard about growth is it's never like a nice, easy trajectory. Like it's up and down, and growth means growing pains. And that's what's hard, I think, is I say, like, we got to kind of tear down the structure and the systems, but I know what that entails. And I know that means there's violence, there's revolution, there's pain, there's grieving families on both sides, on all sides, because usually revolutions are messier than just one side versus the other. This is not the 1500s anymore, right? And that's, and knowing that entails, I think that's part of the internal battle, is like, how far do we want to push this? Like, I've heard this saying before, how committed are you? At breakfast, the chicken is kind of committed. They're just laying the egg. The pig is 100% committed because you're eating the bacon. So, like, how committed am I willing to be? As an ally, what does that look like? And how committed am I willing to be? Right? And how willing am I to not try to, like, what reasons am I doing it for? I mean, my sister had that conversation a lot. What is my intention? What's my motivation in ever speaking out? Is it to get clout and be woke? Is it to so that people know I'm just good enough that they can trust me? Or am I, or what is it for, right? And I don't know if, and that's hard. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but if you ever investigated your motives about something, you never arrive at a final destination, right? Like, I never arrive at a final destination. Eventually, you just have to, like, trust yourself a little bit. Like, even when you asked me to join this, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right, and because, man, I am problematic as hell about a lot of things still. And I know that problematic, and I mean, I'm human to a lot of extent, and I've had to learn to say that about myself. Right? I say that not as a cop out, but like as a form of self-love. We have to let ourselves like be human, make mistakes, but like investigate what our motives are. Especially as white people speaking about this shit, we really have to investigate our motives. And I see Caitlin's kind of watching. She's the one who posted something about sharing violent images that fucking really I thought about. I was like, she's right. Like, I should not be sharing a violent image, even if I think that shock value is gonna turn a white racist into not as racist, because I'm not taking in consideration like everyone else's feelings about the situation and what it's doing trauma wise to people. So that's a long-winded answer to I don't know. Once again.
No, I think, honestly, I think in humility, and you don't want to be that guy, but you do know. And I think you're speaking about a lot of things that is exactly what we need. Like, even as I'm hearing you, I'm like, part of the problem with the system right now is that we're looking to align and create change based on, after we question people, do you believe the same things that I believe? And then we form a group there, and then we move forward. But it sounds like what you're saying and what we're both talking about, we both care about the same things. Therefore, we're moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's where I think part of the change needs to happen is, like, do you care? Do you have heart? Do you have emotions? Do you have feelings about the same things that I care about? Are you broken about the same things that I'm broken about over? Are you struggling in your mind with thoughts and wrestling even internally within yourself about those broken things that you see even within yourself? If we stay at the heart of the issue, caring about the same thing, we can move forward there, instead of asking, well, where do you, just into, whether it's, do you believe the same things on the Republican side or Democratic side, or do you believe the same things on the spiritual side? Man, I saw 3 women that were dressed in their full Muslim getup, and they were literally saying "fuck the police." And there was another lady. Like I said, she was a white lady. She looked hippie. She looked like she just came fresh out of OB, and she was just like, man. She was the main one saying the chant. What was it? It was stop racism. It was a stop abuse. Get rid of racist police. But again, I saw a bunch of people that got together because we cared about the same thing. And that's what I think we need to be at, like caring about the same thing, not so much asking, well, what do you believe in first, whether I rock with you.
Yeah, and I guess my only question of the protests, especially in San Diego, I can't speak to other cities, but I don't know what I don't know what the goal ever is. Like, what's the goal? I didn't know what the goal was today. Like, I know why, but I think what we've been lacking, and I say we as like anyone who's really protesting for something, is part of it is what is like what would make us stop protesting?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing gonna change in a week. And I'm not saying like we shouldn't protest, that's the opposite of what I'm saying. But like the civil rights, it was like they're like, we're not just protesting because one bad thing happened or we're sick of it. It was like, we're gonna keep doing this until it fucking changes. Right? Until schools are desegregated. We're gonna keep marching. Until bathrooms are desegregated, we're gonna keep until counters are desegregated, we're gonna keep sitting at counters. We're gonna keep marching, we're gonna keep closing freeways. And I think that's why I always ask about leadership nowadays. And I would never tell anyone not to protest, honestly. And like, I guess that's part of what I've wondered. And like, I remember the Women's March, and I understand the idea of the Women's March. I didn't know what they were marching for, though, the first one. I just didn't. Like, I understand they were marching for women's rights and stuff. I just didn't. What was the outcome? What was the desired outcome of it?
How do we define
what was the change effected we were looking for?
For sure.
Because I'm super curious to what people's ideas are of what kind of change can we actually affect. What real change do we want to see affected? Let's go fucking get it. That might be like a lot of buildings burned down in the process, but buildings can be rebuilt, right?
Lives can't be brought back to life.
Yes,
for sure. And I think that's the change that people are trying to see. Is one, they don't want to see any more minorities murdered, for sure. They want to see, and it's also not fair too for minorities to be brought into a justice system that is unfair to them from the beginning. But rather have that than see them murdered. Also want to see an elimination of racist police, like racist people in authority. I think that's what people are dying for and screaming for. But I feel you. I went to the protest today and I was like, well, who's the leadership? What's going on? What are we doing next? And so many people were just standing around, looking around, and until the next person started yelling some sort of chant, then everybody yelled along with it, So I think they're going to continue, honestly, as long as people keep innocently dying.
I mean, yeah.
That's going to continue to happen, for sure.
And I asked that question not because
You said what? Brian,
I know. I'm hearing like playback from like a minute ago.
Oh, okay.
We're good now. Sorry about that. Yeah, it sounds like the whole system needs to be dismantled. If we got to replace all of the people, how can we ensure that the same type of people don't end up in power? Because the systems that we're working...
That's what I was saying in the beginning, bro. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, it have to be removed, honestly.
I got to get back on in a minute.
Hey, we're going to carry... But anyways, I appreciate anybody that's been listening. I think me and Brian, I'm going to keep talking to him on the phone. But I think it's really good to have these conversations just one-on-one with people. I'll keep having these conversations with a lot of my friends because I got some good fucking friends in my life. I thank God for people like Brian, and for you guys too. So I'm going to continue this conversation with B. on the phone, but also I'll do some more lives. Appreciate everybody who participated.